the intersection of information and conversation. Weekends with Jason Olbourne on today's News Talk, TNT.
Welcome back to Weekends. This is the hour that, well, from a personal point of view, is the hour I've been waiting for a very long time, not just in the time that I've managed to secure the company of my next guest, but a very long time since I realised that whilst we are in a changing of the guard, the way that the world has worked, this so-called manufactured revolution of ideas to lead the human population into the direction of surveillance and globalism and giving up your free will for your safety and convenience, at some point, the house of cards will collapse. I say that because that's what I believe down at the bottom of my heart, and for the very work that we do here at TNT Radio, to be able to realise that that is what this is all about, to bring the information, to awaken the masses who will eventually demand that their governments and authorities and powers that be stop what they're doing. Now, that comes as step one, but what happens the next day? If there is a global revolution and the people who have committed these crimes against humanity are eventually exposed and we go on to seek justice, what's the good news? What's the good side of what's going on? Well, let me tell you that my next guest is probably the leader in the way that he is exposing the biggest picture of all time. What am I talking about? The origins of the human species. Could there be a third narrative that mixes what we thought we knew into something completely different? And when we get to understand the origins of the species, then we get to ask who we really are and what we really want. And how is it, if we understand that we can move to an economic model that changes the way we live our lives unbelievably the very next day? And let me tell you, it's no longer a theory, it's a fact, because it's already being played out all around the world. And you're going to learn about all of that right now. If you have a chance and you're watching live, please share what you're seeing on your social media, because you are now about to meet Michael Tellinger. Let me tell you, Michael is a scientist, explorer, and internationally acclaimed author of numerous books and dozens of lectures available on YouTube. He's the founder of the Ubuntu Liberation Movement of Unity and Higher Consciousness. Michael has become an authority on the ancient vanished civilizations of Southern Africa, the mysterious origins of humankind, resonance, somatics, and the power of sound. His research includes a diverse field of subjects such as archaeology, mythology, human origins, religion, origins of money, spirituality, breakthrough science, and consciousness. Michael Tellinger, welcome to TNT and welcome to Weekends.
Thank you very much for that wonderful introduction, Jason. Lovely to be talking to you.
Oh, it's as you can tell, it's kind of like a bit of a rock star situation going on here. But Michael, it's the fact that you're able to plant the seeds of knowledge and understanding in a quest to realize that in our gut, our intuition said, this just does not add up. There's got to be something more. And what you've done is you've been able to lead by example, which is the greatest leadership of all, by literally getting out and uncovering real evidence and weaving together information to create an alternative argument that becomes a real alternative narrative. And you don't stop there, because you go all the way to saying, well, how do we get solutions? And it seems that the only way that you can arrive at this is to be able to understand the concept of a very, very big picture. And that's where I wanted to go today in our conversation. Perhaps if we can, Michael, can you tell us a little bit about your background and how you arrived one day to go, you know what? There has to be another argument or narrative or set of facts that shows us that we don't know, because how can we either believe in creation theory or believe in evolution and not agree with it? How do we bring the population together to go, okay, we now have the proof, this is how we got here?
Yeah, Jason, first of all, I guess I can say I've led many lives in one. I've been very fortunate to do many different things throughout my life. And from an earliest of age, I always had an inquiring mind and an inquisitive mind, as many and millions of people do. But not everybody follows up on that, follows through with it, and then, goes through life following their loves and their talents and their skills and what attracts them. Not everyone has the capacity or the ability to do that. I was fortunate enough to be able to do that. In the country that I grew up in South Africa, the situation that I had a stable family, I had a stable, upbringing, and all those things that requires the capacity for you to be able to explore different things. Not everyone is that fortunate. So I'm deeply grateful for my upbringing, my childhood, what I experienced, and the ability to have done so many different things, because I see pretty much everything that I've done in my life was a rehearsal for what I'm doing today. All the different things. So very quickly, I grew up in a musical family. My father is a mining engineer, grew up on the mines in South Africa. And Australians understand that very much. The mining industry is huge down there. And then I always thought I was going to be a musician. And I spent many of my early years following music, playing music. I became quite a successful musician in South Africa. But I then went to university. I studied and became a pharmacist. I studied pharmaceutics at Wits University in Johannesburg. It's the major university in South Africa. Graduated with a Bachelor of Pharmacy degree in 1983. And then I went back into the music industry. I didn't really work in that industry. I got back into the pharmaceutical industry in the late 80s. And then in the 90s, I was involved in retail pharmacy and manufacturing pharmaceuticals, in importing pharmaceuticals. So I got to understand the pharmaceutical industry very, very well, while I was pursuing a passion in arts and culture and music and theater and so forth. So I was always passionate about biology, the human body, cells, physiology, and so forth. So when I started to study and explore genetics and DNA, that became a huge passion. And at some stage, while I was studying, somebody dropped an Eric von Daniken book in my lap and said, "Hey, you might enjoy this." And it was Chariots of the Gods. And I was about 19, first year at university, and that changed my life. That literally opened me up to questioning the things that is fed to us by mainstream education, mainstream media, and so forth. And I guess that was the catalyst to really push me to question, explore, and just ask questions.
It's extraordinary, isn't it, that the book that changes one's life, and there it was at 19. So you're really at a crossroads. You're no longer a child. You're an adult. You're at the very beginning of your questioning, and you receive this. But you don't just stop there and allow it to be a fantasy that disappears. You go the other way. It's the beginning of the rest of your life, literally. How do you go and therefore discover in real time actual archaeological evidence that shows you that supports the von Daniken argument?
Well, again, you've got to be open to those questions and those suggestions and those ideas. If you've got blinkers on, they can throw the ideas and suggestions and information and knowledge and research. It can come at you from every angle, but you're not going to recognize it. You're not going to respond to it or react to it because you're going to be blocking it. So you've got to have an open mind. And by open mind, I mean an open mind to everything, the crazy stuff out there, the conspiracy stuff out there, and be able to sift through it all and make sense of it and say, okay, wow, that's really crazy. That's, hey, wow, crazy stuff. I might not understand it today, but you'll find that just bring it into your periphery, put it in file 13. You may need that information at some stage in the future. And I can tell you this, what I thought was outlandish and crazy when I was 20, became not so outlandish and crazy by the time I was 30. The woo-woo and even further crazy stuff, especially scientific and biological and genetic information that I was getting, what may have been science fiction stuff in the 1980s and 1990s suddenly became science fact and reality, and we've moved way beyond that in the 2000s. And so you've got to have an open mind and be prepared to absorb information and then do with that information what is best for you.
So if we fast forward, because now you've written an incredible amount of books. You've written on Adam's calendar, for example, the slave race. You're talking about, ancient gold mining, etc. What's the best way forward from here to explain to the audience where you make this great leap and that you now provide real evidence to show that, in fact, there was a third narrative in the origins of the species? Where should we start?
Well, look, this is a huge subject. So to start debating this will hijack this entire conversation. So all I can say is maybe look at my book. Look at my first book that was released in 2005, 2006. I forget the date now. It's called Slave Species of God. And it's a very important book. And if I'm punting my own book here, forgive me, because the reason it's important, because it draws a very sharp distinction between God with a big G and the gods with a small g. And therein lies the importance in that book, because many people that promote either intelligent design and creationism and the creator and God and so forth, as opposed to the atheists and the evolutionists and telling us that everything came out of random particles bumping into each other and then suddenly creating consciousness and the ability to design and develop and grow and have this conversation and understand each other. All of this is very important in this context. So you need to go through that phase yourself. But the Slave Species of God book really identifies and highlights the difference between God with a big G, the creator of the universe and all things in it, the consciousness, the creator, whatever you want to call it, God, and the gods with a small g, or advanced beings with knowledge of technology and knowledge of genetic manipulation, of whom we have a huge amount of knowledge and information coming to us in the Sumerian clay tablets. And that's what that book is all about, really showing that there was some serious manipulation of our DNA hundreds of thousands of years ago, and that a new species was cloned and created, and that species might actually end up being us, the human race. That's up to people to go and do their research and reach their own conclusions.
Absolutely. And this is the point, isn't it? That new knowledge can only really be attained by taking a leap and then being able to confirm it. But at the same time, you become better at it, more discerning and more able to look at what is a conspiracy theory and what becomes a fact. And this is, of course, culminating in the work that you've done. One of the biggest hang-ups that people say to me, and it becomes a brick wall, they literally draw a screen down and they'll say, there can't be, for example, an Anunnaki superior race that created us. It's not in the Bible, therefore, they'll argue, or whatever. And I'll argue this and I'll say, hang on a second. What's to stop the human being to create another intelligent species somewhere in the future? And effectively, we would become the god of that species. But it doesn't mean that an earlier species can't have been created, or creationism, if you will. At some point, I mean, this is where I'm trying to get to here, that maybe things aren't as simplified as they're made out to be, which effectively could be just a human creation in itself. So the point there is that we have to keep an open mind in this particular argument to come to a point. Moving forward from that, Michael, do you think there will ever be a day in our lifetimes where perhaps the prevailing authorities will accept that this should be properly explored?
Yeah, look, first of all, let's talk about the authorities in a second. Let's come back to history and history books. It's really important for people to realize that our history books and what we read in history books is highly, highly subjective. And it's written from a perspective of those people that were writing the history books. And we should know by now that our history books are written by the victors. Those that win the wars write the history books, and they erase, or they go to great extents and lengths and extremes to erase their opponents, those ones that they conquered. So our history books, we got to be very, very careful not to take the history at face value and think that's exactly and accurate as we read it in our history books. Because the more you study that, the more you go back and the more discoveries you make, and the more you think about what you're observing, physical evidence that you're looking at, that does not always match the history books. So somewhere there's a mismatch. what we discover in archaeology and in anthropology and in botany and so forth, what we discover there, and compare it to what our history books tell us, often does not match, and actually more often than not. And people are not always aware of that. And I can talk about it at great length because of my discoveries of the ancient civilizations in South Africa and Southern Africa, and all the research I've been doing about that since 2007, when I first started to explore the ancient civilizations, the ancient ruins, and then became the fossils and the Adam's calendar, and clearly very, very highly sophisticated structures that point to an advanced civilization with a knowledge of Caesar technology, a knowledge of cymatics, a knowledge of levitation, a knowledge of the universe, and so much more. So to come back to authorities and acknowledging this, I think it's just the authorities don't have to acknowledge anything. We ultimately, the people are the masses. We're the authority, and the more people that realize this and study this and share this information, slowly but surely it will then filter into our subconscious. It'll filter into our societies, into our communities, into our family structures. And before you know, children are walking around referring to what we're talking about as a known fact or a known body of knowledge. We can't say fact. We have this knowledge. We weren't there 300,000 years ago, so we can't call it a fact. But there are enough extrapolations that certainly point to very, very strongly to some serious manipulation of our DNA some 300 or 400,000 years ago.
Michael, I love the fact that regardless of the argument, you are leading the entire way. There is no dependence on authority. There's no asking for anyone else to save us. It is entirely about the people themselves leading themselves to the world and future that they want through gaining knowledge. It's inspiring. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to continue this conversation. But in the meantime, if you love a good documentary, then you'll love our special screenings uninterrupted. Cinema features some of the latest. Welcome back to Weekends. My guest this hour, Michael Tellinger. Please go to michaeltellinger.com and you'll be able to get the latest on the work that Michael is doing. Michael, I wanted to ask you about the tourism and, of course, Adam's calendar and how you've managed to put this together, because this must be a remarkable way for people to see with their own eyes the work that you're doing. It must be inspiring thousands of people.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. I was very fortunate in 2007, just while I was doing the book tour for my Slave Species of God book, a guy came to one of my lectures in Pretoria, and his name was Johan Heine. And after the lecture, he said to me, "Would you like to see some aerial photographs of some crazy ruins in South Africa?" And I said, "Yeah, absolutely." So he whipped out his laptop and he started to show me hundreds of aerial photographs that had been taken for at least 10 years or maybe even longer prior to that, from helicopters and aeroplanes, because he runs the Working on Fire, which does the forest fires in South Africa. So he was fortunate to accumulate a large number of these aerial photographs of the Stone Circle ruins that became known as the Stone Circle ruins. And I instantly knew that was connected to my research in Slave Species of God, to the existence of the Anunnaki, the presence of the Anunnaki here in South Africa, because the ruins made no sense whatsoever. I was aware of those ruins in my research in Slave Species of God, but until then, there was only a scant paper, a few scientific papers written about these ruins, and they were claiming that there were about 20,000 of these ruins in South Africa, which is already a large number. 20,000 is not a small number. So I got very excited. Now I could see those ruins for the first time, because the photographs did not really exist. They weren't just publicly available. And I just went, this is crazy. And then a few months later, he invited me to Nelspruit, this town close to the Kruger Park here in South Africa. And we flew around in a helicopter for 2 days. And he showed me around all the ancient sites, and then also took me to what he called the calendar, which he discovered about 4 years prior to that. And he himself researched it, analyzed it, studied it, and realized that it was aligned to all the cardinal points, north, south, east, west. It had all kinds of solstices and equinoxes built into it. There's a calendar stone and a stone that casts a shadow. You can tell exactly the length of the year where the shadow is on the stone. Summer solstice, winter solstice, and the shadow moves back. So this is clearly an intelligently designed structure. And the dating of it became a huge obsession. How do you date? Where does it calendar come from? How long? How old is it? And the longer we looked at it, the further and further back in time it pushed it, and eventually we ended up, realizing that it's probably around 300,000 years old.
It's just absolutely extraordinary to think that we're in the 21st century and discovering this information and making sense. We're almost reverse engineering intelligence and knowledge from goodness me, 300,000 years ago. So it predates everything that we've ever come to know. And here it is still in existence today. The people that go and visit on these particular tours, do they walk away changed for life, or do they just sort of go, oh, well, maybe? I mean, what's the general consensus here? I'm just thinking it's got to be the greatest life changer of all.
It's overwhelmingly changes people's lives. It changes the way they see the world, they see their place in the world, our history, the origins of the species. The evidence is so overwhelming, especially once you've been to my Stone Circle Museum and you see the physical evidence of the tools, the artifacts, the fossils, and the science and the arguments and so forth. You leave a changed person. It changes your understanding of quantum mechanics and quantum physics and particle physics. It's all connected. And then you start to realize, hold on, everything that I thought of our history has shifted. So it changes people's lives. And we've had thousands of Aussies that have come to visit us here.
Well, absolutely. I mean, in all seriousness, Michael, you are the real life Indiana Jones.
Yeah. Well, thanks for that.
But I mean, obviously it's a bit hard to take, but I mean, this is the point, right? Because I mean, and I say it all the time on this show, if you find your obsession and you make it your profession, you'll never work a day in your life. And it just feels like that this is this beautiful thing about realizing at different points in our lives and extrapolating and doing the hard work. But I know how hard you do work, but I wonder in all of this that you were destined to be able to do it. Does it actually feel like work, or is it just part of this wonderful life that you get to live?
Well, strangely enough, I don't do much of the archaeological and the discovery research stuff anymore, because the last 5 years or so, I've been completely hijacked willingly by the whole One Small Town initiative that grew out of the Ubuntu movement into the One Small Town initiative, which came as a result of my research into the origins of humankind, discovering all that ancient stuff, and then realizing where money comes from, because that's all part of the journey. So if I wasn't researching the origins of humankind, didn't stumble across the Sumerian text and then discover the kings lists, where we read about the ancient kings, the first priest kings that were appointed by the gods, and how they built their temples and how they created money and how they first started to issue gold, the first clay tablets in the forms of money from their temples, I would not have realized that the origins of money is very different from what we are taught at school. So the obsession from ancient civilizations led to a slow evolution and then the creation of the Ubuntu movement. And now what we're doing with the One Small Town initiative around the world. So they are so far removed, and yet they're inextricably connected. The one thing leads to the other. And that's a chain reaction that you mentioned right up front when we started to talk.
This is the point, because at the end of the day, there's only so much bad news and tyranny that anyone can deal with. The anxiety, the bad health, the lack of sleep, the bad dreams, etc. One must have something to look forward to, something to plan for. And when it is that you can realize that there is a real solution out there that you can not only trust, but you can believe in and want to get up in the morning and go and get involved with, that's when things change. I think we should talk a little bit about the idea of the creation of money, if you don't mind, because I do want to, before we go to the break in about 10 minutes' time, to introduce the idea of contributionism, because that's a huge subject to talk about. And I want to be able to demonstrate to our audience that watches from all around the world how they can start paying attention and also realizing that if that is what they want to do, that they can get involved almost immediately. So perhaps in a way, Michael, if you don't mind, to explain the idea of this creation of money, what we've got wrong, what we misunderstand, and et cetera, that's led you down this pathway.
Thanks very much, Jason. So firstly, like everyone that's watching it, just imagine a world without money. That's really the journey I went through in 2005 when I was researching origins of humankind. And I started to imagine what would happen if we woke up tomorrow and there was no money in the world. Money did not exist. How would we survive? What would we do? And let me tell you, that became one of the most exciting periods of my life when I started to imagine solutions for a world without money. And I would really recommend that you do it. Just do the exercise. And you'll see that instead of red tape, bureaucratic nonsense, and all the hurdles that restrict us and hold us back from achieving, the moment you remove money from the system, you open up the infinite human spirit of creation and finding solutions for all the problems we face. If you don't have any hurdles or obstacles in your way, we find solutions for everything in our lives, and we deal with it and we move on. So we build foundations that stay there forever, that don't crumble and break down after a while. And that's interesting because that's what we're discovering about when we discover ancient civilizations. Look how well they built stuff. They didn't build it to be replaced by something bigger and better and the new improved version of this temple, right? It was built and was large, it still lasts today. So the whole origins of money changed my entire perspective on the world today, and the fact that we've literally unwittingly become slaves to a corrupt, draconianly imposed system on humanity, and we're not aware of it. And we're born into it. So all of us are born into the social structure that we're born in. So we can't imagine anything else because that's all there is. That's our reality. And I started to think of a word and a world where money doesn't exist, where we contribute our talents and skills towards a world where we share and contribute our talents and skills so that it benefits everybody. And from that evolved the word contributionism. But it came from having that aha moment when I learned about that from what the Sumerian texts, the king's lists tell us. And they tell us that there was a time in human history when the first priest kings were appointed by the gods. And these first priest kings were scattered around the world. They were given fierce weapons. They were given knowledge and power. And they clearly, by description, most likely were not human, because they lived for thousands and thousands of years. And they had these fierce weapons with which they could smite humanity or smite the people. If they didn't listen, didn't obey, they would be smited. And you'd ask yourself, well, how fierce could those weapons be? Because if somebody tells you, as of today, all this land now belongs to me because I'm now the king, and now you got to work for me, and etc. People say, no, I don't think so. Screw you, buddy. But if you have fierce weapons with which you can smite the people and convince them that unless they obey you, they're going to be hurt, then you start getting allegiance to the king and so forth. So it's a much longer discussion, obviously. I'm just trying to lay a foundation here. So we suddenly have the unexpected, out of the blue appearance of the very first royal bloodlines on earth. These first priest kings that were appointed by the gods. And we read about them in great detail in the Sumerian texts. And it's not just in one place. There was some obscure place that they refer to it. It's very clearly spelled out in various kings' lists that they talk about this in the Sumerian texts. And then what these priest kings did, they built their temples, impenetrable, huge temples, the huge walls, and large doorways, which also would suggest that they may not have been human size. And from there, they started to impose their laws, and they started to impose their punishment, and they started to impose or issue money. So suddenly this one place called the temple became the courthouse. It became the place of justice and dispensing, punishment and death and all that. And it became the bank. So you can see how the courts and the banks are inextricably connected in their origins. And they started to issue clay tablets as the first forms of promissory notes or negotiable instruments from these temples. They would tell people to bring in their gold and bring in their silver, and in return, they would give them a piece of clay to say, John Smith brought in 5 pieces of silver and 1 piece of gold, and that clay tablet now represented the gold that you brought into the temple. And this goes back 6,000 years. So this is not just a few hundred years or 1,000 years, or to the Knights Templar, when they were issuing their promissory notes between, France and the Promised Land. This goes back way, way beyond that. And I realized, oh my God, Money has not evolved over thousands of years as a tool to help humanity. Money was artificially and suddenly introduced by a very elite group of people who then became the royal bloodlines, and was introduced as a total and utter tool of enslavement and oppression. And that changed everything. And if you look at the modern banking system and how the Rothschilds completely perfected it from the 1760s and turned it into a global banking, slavery empire, we see how this has unfolded and pretty much enslaved every single one of us. And that led to the launch of the Ubuntu movement that then became the One Small Town Initiative, which has now taken the world by storm, where we are creating an alternative system. We're not fighting the system. You can't fight the system. You can never fight the system because the system was created to destroy everything that attacks it. So you can't fight it. But what we can do, so we can be very smart. And what our slogan is to use the tools of enslavement as tools of liberation, to create a parallel system that uses all the tools they've created to enslave us, but we're creating it on a parallel track, and we're using it to help and benefit humanity in our small towns and communities, to make them prosperous and abundant and rich, not just in food and technology and healthcare and housing, but rich in cash as well, because that cash gives us the strength and the foundation. So you can't get knocked over because you don't have any money to support your actions.
Goodness me. Absolutely extraordinary explanation. Now, we're about to head into the break, Michael, but before we do, could you recommend from your library of books what people, if they wanted to get information on the Sumerian texts and your discoveries, what's the first book that they should purchase?
Well, if you're interested in Origins of Humankind, then Slave Species of God is the one. And then to see the evidence of the Anunnaki, because it's unquestionable that the Anunnaki, the Sumerian Anuna, as they refer to, keep in mind that in the clay tablets, they're not referred to as the Anunnaki. Anunnaki was a sort of a commercial word that was created by Zechariah Sitchin, but in the Sumerian text, they're referred to as the Anuna gods. And the Slave Species of God deals with that in great detail. But then the evidence of that is the Adam's Calendar book and the Temples of the African Gods, which give you great photographs and evidence, unquestionable evidence of more than 10 million ancient ruins. So I'm not talking about 20,000 or 100,000. I'm talking about 10 million or so ancient ruins, stone circle ruins, that were not dwellings for people, that were not houses for cattle or sheep, that were energy generating devices. So what these guys built up was a huge energy generating grid. And then obviously to go into the world today and to find solutions and provide solutions for this crazy world, we're in the Ubuntu Contributionism book, which really spells out the foundation and the philosophy for the One Small Town initiative that we're busy with around the world right now.
Wonderful. And can people access that directly via the website at michaeltellinger.com?
The easiest is to get it on Amazon. It just, unfortunately, as much as, I'm not in favor of Amazon as a global giant corporation, they make it easy for us. So once again, we're using the tools of enslavement as tools of liberation because it helps to spread the word right now until we have a better alternative.
Well said. We're going to take a break and we're going to be back to discuss contributionism, our small town, and how you can change the rest of your life simply by realizing that if this is the system for you, you can get started straight away. Well, you're watching and listening to Weekends with Jason Olbourne here on TNT.
When the whole world seems turned upside down, we sort through it together. Weekends with Jason Olbourne on today's News Talk, TNT.
Welcome back to Weekends. This is the run home for me, and it is the beginning of a brand new way of thinking. We're here with guest Michael Tellinger. Michael, now is the time. Let's talk about contributionism. What is it, and how does it relate to our small town?
Well, thanks very much. Contributionism, the explanation is in the word, contributionism. That's what it is, where people contribute their talents, their skills towards their community, towards the upliftment of their community and themselves and their families, but they contribute so that everybody in the community can benefit from their skills and talents. And that's a very simple philosophy that we implement in the One Small Town initiative. But to implement that is not as simple as people would imagine, because we have all the rules and regulations and the laws and the acts and the bills and so forth. So we've had to learn over especially the last 4 years, how to navigate this ocean of obstacles and hurdles and find solutions to bring this kind of life into the small towns of the world.
So contribution itself, the idea of being able to make a contribution in one small town, I remember watching the 15-minute video on YouTube, which explained it beautifully. The idea that you could contribute in a small community, and you talked about towns perhaps of, say, 5,000 people, give or take, that could contribute perhaps 3 hours a week to creating something that in that town is very good at doing, whether it be, the growing of a crop or, the sewing of clothing or whatever it was, and become expert in that and thereby creating technically economies of scale. Is that a reasonable way to summarize?
Yes, it is. It's a very, very light and entry-level way. Let me just say this. We're doing something that's never been done before. So we literally are learning every step of the way. We're building the airplane as we're flying it. And that's how somebody recently described it. And I love that description. So I'm using it now, because there is no textbook. There's no playbook for us to follow this. The Ubuntu Contributionism book that I released in 2014 is the foundation for this. But now how to implement this, where the community works together for the greater benefit of everybody. How does that work? How do we make it work? So what I can explain to people listening to this is, first of all, go to our onesmalltown.org website. It is quite up to date. It's constantly changing because we're constantly shifting and moving and updating and improving things. But go and read the onesmalltown.org website and inform yourself with what we do, how we work. But in a nutshell, it's any town anyway, but we call it one small town because it's a lot easier to implement something like this in the small town, where the people know each other, where we can call a town meeting very quickly, and a large number of representatives of the town would arrive. So it's a lot easier to do it in small towns than in cities or urban areas. It's virtually impossible to do this in the cities. So one small towns are also filled with people with incredible talents and skills and know-how, and farmers and engineers and retired this and retired that, and architects, and so we have a pool of incredible talent sitting there, and they're all very keen to do something. First of all, to premise this, is the reason that one small town is happening is because virtually everyone alive today, and I'm making an assumption here, and I'm making almost an absolute statement here. Almost everyone alive today is unhappy with what's going on in the world. I don't think there are many people that wake up in the morning and say, wow, what a great world. Everything is going my way. What a great future we have. My children's future is fantastic. My life's looking so rosy. I don't know anyone that goes through that thought process. So we have to assume that very few people are happy with what's going on in the world. Very few people are happy with what their governments are doing. Very few people are happy with their jobs and how hard they have to work to put food on the table and take care of their family, and all the nonsense they have to deal with just to stay alive. So almost everyone is looking for a better way of life, a better way to live, a better world. And that's what One Small Town presents. We present a solution to the frustration, the misery, the depression that so many people around the world are facing. And we're doing it by not fighting the system. We're doing it by creating something different, something alternative that will eventually make the current existing system obsolete. And we're doing it in the small towns. So if you just take, say, a number of small town people, and take a town of 10,000 people, and if every one of us contributes 3 hours a week, that gives us 30,000 hours of labor, 30,000 hours that we need to do something. That suddenly makes us equivalent to a very large corporation, whether it's Mercedes-Benz or who knows, a very large factory that is either building something, manufacturing or creating or growing or packaging something. Now, you could, that turns your town and your members in your town, the people that live in your town, into a powerful labor force. And we can pretty much choose to do anything we want with that labor force, because it's our labor force. It's our choice to contribute those 3 hours a week. Some people want to contribute more. Some people want to contribute 3 hours a day because they get so excited about this. And that is what's happening now. So we've got a few small towns that have launched over the last 2 years. And we've been learning the really by trial and tribulation, what works and what doesn't work. We've just recently sort of, I guess, perfected it as to how do we start to implement this One Small Town initiative, by appointing an ambassador, by putting a bunch of people around that ambassador that are business minded, that know how to project manage, that know how to take an idea and turn it into something that's going to make money and be successful. At the same time, we look at the upliftment projects, the community upliftment projects, the things that cost money, that don't make money, the things like fixing the roads and the parks, helping the schools and the orphanages and the old age homes, and a food kitchen for those that don't have any food, and all the things that we would love our town to see and to look beautiful. But it's not looking beautiful because our municipalities are either stealing the money, or the politicians are stealing the money, and the money is not reaching the towns and the people, and it's not doing what it's supposed to do. So we take a team of people and we do a 2-year plan for our town, or a 12-month to a 2-year plan. And we say, this is what we do. We identify the business opportunities, the things that we have naturally that we can use and turn into businesses. We look at the community upliftment projects, and we put this into a spreadsheet and a plan for 12 to 24 months and say, right, this is what we're going to do with our town. We have what we call an ambassador with a support team. And that's when we get going. So this is a brand new strategy that we just really put together about 3 months ago, after more than 2 years of trying things and realizing it doesn't work. You can't just appoint somebody and say, okay, well, let's get everybody to work together and start some businesses together. You need a structure. So to achieve that, we've created what we call the One Small Town platform. It's a very powerful online blockchain type platform that manages all of this. It allows the members to sign up as members for your specific small towns. It allows people anywhere in the world to sign up as a member, just a member that sits somewhere in the world that supports the One Small Town initiative. It allows people to sign up and apply to be either an ambassador or an accountant or a bookkeeper or a project manager or a business planner, which we desperately need people to write business plans, because without business plans, you can't put together a funding mechanism to raise funds for those businesses and so forth. So we now have a powerful platform that helps people to sign up as members. It manages all the projects that we start where we need people for the 3 hours. They get a membership card. It works with QR codes. It's a highly, highly secure and sophisticated system that allows us to monitor in our towns that people are delivering their 3 hours a week or 3 hours a day, that they're going where we need them to go, or where, when I say we, it's not me, where the town, the town's management team, where they need the people to go to do this. We either work on the farms and picking fruit, or packaging something, or building fridges, or making tables, whatever it is, or breeding horses. It's up to the community to decide what kind of businesses they want to start. So it's not driven by me. We just share ideas, and we provide our experience and the platform upon which they can build this for themselves. So any town, anywhere, any community, anywhere, can log on right now, become a member, and then go and apply to be an ambassador, or apply to be a project manager or a business planner, and start putting this thing together. We'll help you, we'll guide you, and help you launch this in your community. Now, to reward people for their 3 hours a week, we've created what we call our own membership token, which is an NFT, a non-fungible token. And it is, as far as we know, the most valuable community token in the world right now. It has replaced what Bitcoin was supposed to do. Bitcoin came in with big fanfare and big promise and as an alternative means of exchange with people, and very quickly became an alternative means of enrichment and helped nobody except a few Bitcoin billionaires and a bunch of people who made a lot of money. Well, what we call the infinity token, because its potential is ultimately infinite. Every time you contribute your 3 hours towards your community projects or uplifting your town or teaching something or doing anything for your community, you've spent 3 hours of your life. That is the most precious thing that we have. Our time, our life, our 3 hours of our time that we've contributed, which means it's an asset-backed community token. So every member that contributes their 3 hours automatically gets an infinity token in their digital wallet as a One Small Town member. And at the end of the week or any time, you can go to the One Small Town store and get stuff with your infinity tokens from the One Small Town store. Obviously, I can't go into the detail how this all works. All of this is on our website and will be in more detail as this thing grows, because the One Small Town stores are a relatively new addition to this very exciting, growing and evolving solution for the world. So we literally have put together a solution for communities to come together, start cooperating and collaborating. And that is the fundamental essence of this: unity, cooperation, and collaboration. Unless we do those three things, we will not succeed in escaping the slavery system that has been imposed on us. It's really that simple. So we better start working together, cooperating, collaborating for the benefit of our whole community, not just me, but what can we do for ourselves that will create a foundation for decades and centuries of prosperity and abundance for our future civilizations and our children. And we've got that platform now, and we're literally getting out of the starting blocks with some very exciting technologies that we're about to launch that will change the world. I'm not going to mention what kind of technologies they are, but I'll let your imagination run wild. And also with seed treatment technology that helps seeds grow quicker, faster, strengthens the DNA. It basically strips the GMO from the seeds and creates seeds that will help our farmers grow, small farmers grow seeds for the big farmers and create food abundance and food prosperity for our communities. We've created a funding mechanism where every small town and every community, whatever business you come up with, whether it's a brewery that needs $100 million or whether it's a hospital that needs $500 million, it doesn't matter what business you want to start on whether it's a shoe factory or planting food, as long as you have a business plan and the business plan shows a good profit, it will attract investors. So we have now created a mechanism by which small towns and small communities can fund their own business plans and get funding for what they want to do in their communities. And we've just launched last week our very first funding token, our investor token, for the first One Small Town health center in Ras El Mat in Lebanon. That's one of our most successful One Small Towns. And boy, what a great place to be right now, because this is a state-of-the-art, world-class health center with all the latest technologies, with about 40 doctors, leading international doctors and experts in their field, all contributing their time. So that's going to create health tourism from the whole Gulf area to this health center, while it provides those health services that community could never afford. So now the members of One Small Town get 5-star world-class health services, while it provides 5-star world-class health services to all the rich people in the whole Gulf area. So we're busy funding that, and we've launched our first investor token for the Ras Al Matan Health Center, and it's literally a week old. So I would really urge all your listeners and viewers to go onto onesmalltown.org and go and support this initiative. This is how we cross-pollinate and help to crowdfund each other's businesses, from one small town to another, from people that live in the cities that want to help One Small Town, that are passionate about One Small Town, but they don't live in the One Small Town. This is your opportunity to now get involved and really help this initiative to explode around the world, because there'll be more businesses starting and needing funding on a weekly and a monthly basis.
Michael, one of the beautiful things about what you've been able to explain is the term abundance. We live in a world that is pushing the idea of scarcity. You flip that on its head and you've created a system whereby abundance is what comes. The other beautiful thing about what you said was that even though you said it's not about me, it requires the ability through motivation that we all naturally become self-starters, but at the same time, we make a contribution into a collective, which is our own private communities, wherever it is that we operate in the world. So for the first time, a system that is working outside of the political spectrum is combining what traditionally would be the left, the collective idea, and the right, which is the self-starter, putting it all together, meaning that everyone wants to be involved and the shackles of politics fall away, never to be spoken of again if we can get into a system. It is truly incredible, remarkable, and the product obviously of a life's work with the system and people around you that it seems it rubs off because there seems to be very little resistance in what you're doing. It's just momentum on top of momentum and good ideas through sound research that becomes this inspiration for all of us to realize that at long last, there is a pathway out to a much better world for we, the human species, who don't even know where we came from. So how can we know where we're going? And this is the wonderful thing in this summation of this short, really, conversation today. Unfortunately, we've run out of time. I just want to say thank you so much, michaeltellinger.com. Michael, thank you for being on the show. Incredible.
Thank you very much, Jason. And just for your viewers, again, go to onesmalltown.org, learn all about the One Small Town initiative. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. Well, we're going to take that. We'll have to go in a minute, but when we do, coming up after the break, Alex will be here talking tech. You have been watching Weekends with Jason Olbourne. This is with Michael Tellinger, superstar, rock star, the next Indiana Jones. It doesn't really matter, but onesmalltown.org is where you need to go. And of course, there'll be a book there on michaeltellinger.com to change the way we look at everything. What a great show. What a great interview. What a great time to be finally inspired and motivated that we are going to get out of this. And boy, oh boy, what a great world we have on the other side. And all you need to do is take that first step. Thanks for watching. Tomorrow, Jerome Corsi to kick off. We're going now. See you next time tomorrow.